Welcome back to Microsoft Flight Simulator, and welcome to this short but hopefully informative video detailing all of the current mods that I use in the sim. Now, believe it or not, even though there are hundreds available, there are only 10 main mods that I use all of the time to make my sim experience as realistic as possible. So in this video I'm going to go through all 10 of them and show you which ones I use, why I use them, and how you can get a hold of them. Let's start with perhaps the most obvious one of them all, and that is of course the FlyByWire A32NX mod. This is now a standalone version of the A320 developed by the FlyByWire team. It gets better and better with every update, and there are sometimes several updates a day to the different versions. There are 3 different versions. Number 1 is the stable version, number 2 is the development version, and number 3 is the experimental version. You can read more about the different builds available and what differences there are on their website, but the one I fly is the experimental build, as this usually has all the latest features and of course has the custom LNAV, VNAV systems, meaning it has the working TCAS, holds, top of descent, etc. It is now available on the FlyByWire website, or you can download their custom installer. So that is why it's my number 1 pick for the simulator. Next up we have Vatsim. Vatsim is a completely free online air traffic simulation network which allows you to simulate real-world air traffic control. Just load up their vPilot client, file a flight plan and start talking to air traffic controllers. You can also hear other pilots on the frequency, leading to a realistic experience. The network operates and functions as close as possible to real life procedures, even using live weather. To install this, just go to their website and download their software package, then create an account, take the online test and start flying. I highly recommend you use this. Next up, number 3 has to be the Amphibious Toolbar Pushback add-on. This is the mod that I use to be able to push the aircraft back nice and accurately. It has loads of features, as you can see, and you can also access things like the fuel trucks, catering vehicles and stuff like that. And now you can even pre-plan the pushback, so you don't have to manually push back whilst concentrating on starting the engines and preparing the aircraft for departure. It also has vocal overlays, so you can hear the conversations between the flight and ground crew whilst you're being pushed back. Number 4 then has to be PACX. PACX brings the responsibility of travelling with passengers to the sim. Over 800 different sounds make each flight different. You will be able to hear your destination airport, flight number, the time of day, the outside temperature and announcements. You can also inform passengers of delays, diversions, aircraft problems and more. The vocal recognition allows you to make public addresses, to interact with your passengers and crew. And you can also hear your announcements played back through the aircraft's PA system. And finally, the passengers will react and judge your flights, including your landings, so make sure you practice those. Number 5 then is Latin VFR Global Ground Vehicles. This mod just replaces the liveries and types of ground vehicles from different regions around the world. I especially like this as it adds some more realism to the sim and also more detail. It is payware, so you can get it off the sim market or off the Microsoft Flight Simulator marketplace, and it will cost you about €40. Number 6 is another payware mod, and this is the Rex Global Airport textures that I use. Now, if we have a look at the ground at the default airports without this texture package, then they look rather clean and the lines look very, very fresh. There's no broken, cracked asphalt or anything like that, and no oil stains on any of the parking stands, and even the runways look rather clean. Once the Rex Global Airport Textures mod has been installed, all of our lines look, well, rather used and well worn, much more realistic and similar to real world situations. You can also refine this in the mod as well and define how much wear and tear you want. Once again though, this is payware, so maybe not for everyone, but I do find that it makes a massive difference. And again, of course, this affects every airport in the Asobo world, apart from those handcrafted airports that you may have previously installed. Now, moving on to number 7, we have FS Realistic. FS Realistic is an add-on that adds more realistic sounds and camera movements to the sim for a more immersive feel. When flying, it adds different sounds depending on what aircraft you're flying. For example, the clapping sounds on the landing. Now, this is something that you will mainly hear in airliners rather than in a GA aircraft. It picks the most suitable sounds for you, but you can also remove sounds, add sounds, and create different profiles for different aircraft. The camera movements and camera vibrations also add more realism when taking off, landing, or going through turbulence. I highly recommend this as it brings in a new level of immersion to the sim. It is payware, but it's not too expensive, around the €18 mark. Up next for number 8, we have Latin-VFR's Static Aircraft. This add-on does exactly what it sounds like. It adds static aircraft to the airports, and depending on the region that the airport is in, will depend on the liveries that are placed on the aircraft. For example, if you're at London Gatwick, then you'll see lots of EasyJet aircraft, British Airways aircraft, and TUI aircraft. Whereas if you're at JFK, then you'll see lots of American Airlines, United Airlines, Delta, etc. The models are detailed, but if you get too close, then the textures do start to become a bit vague. In all fairness though, you'll never be getting this close to the models, so it's not something that you'll ever notice. In my opinion though, it just makes the whole airport environment look much more alive and closer to the real world. And finally, you can buy this off the sim market for around €15. Number 9 then is a quick one, but absolutely essential, particularly if you're using SimBrief or flying on Vatsim. This is to have the Navigraph data installed. Now, Navigraph have a beta installer, so you can go ahead and search for this using Google and download it from the Navigraph website. Of course, it's payware, so you will have to have a Navigraph subscription to be able to access their current AIRAC cycle. As I say, I wouldn't be without this, particularly when flying on Vatsim, as it really does make the flight plans more realistic. And finally, moving on to number 10, and that is Latin-VFR's Jetway Pro. Now, I don't often fly to default airports just because there are so many great payware airports available, and freeware airports available for that matter, all with custom jetways. However, on the occasion that I do fly to a default airport, this mod just makes everything look so much better when approaching the gate. The glass jetway has really good details inside and out, and when you compare that to the default jetways in the sim, you can see there is quite a big difference. A small price to pay of about €8, but it affects every airport on the planet, with the exception of course of any handcrafted airports that you've got in your community folder. So that is my list of 10 mods that I am using for every single flight in the Microsoft Flight Simulator. Of course, I do also have payware airports, but I'm not going to go through each and every one of those because, as you can imagine, there are quite a few. Not just payware airports, but of course some fantastic freeware airports available on sites like flightsim.to. If you think there are any other must-have mods that I'm currently not using or shown in the video, please let me know down in the comments below, as I would love to check those out and hear what you guys are using as well to make the sim look even more fantastic and realistic than it already is. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and of course if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell so you don't miss any future content or live streams. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you very, very soon. Goodbye.